Let this be your come to Jesus moment with any liberal you know. Donald Trump Jr. joins me now. Sir, you have been obviously fighting this fight, screaming this from the hills. They call you crazy and a conspiracy theorist. Turns out you were right about everything.
Yeah, I pretty much nailed it. I mean, Carl, I wrote the book Liberal Privilege in the summer of 2020. I mean, I literally talk about Joe Biden's cognitive decline there. I interviewed doctors who knew him, who were around. Ronnie Jackson, who was literally a chief medical officer of the White House while Joe Biden was there, talking about cognitive decline, talking about what would be the statistical possibility of someone having two major brain aneurysms like Joe Biden has had and not having very significant cognitive issues because of it. It's almost an impossibility, probably an impossibility, certainly with the added stress of this. So if someone like me, who at least maybe this time now I'm basically a journalist, but at that time I wasn't, just writing as a concerned citizen, was able to piece this stuff together and talk about it. How did the rest of the media get away with lying to us about it, telling us that this man's going to be in charge? He's the guy you want to pick up the phone at 3 o'clock in the morning when something goes really wrong. No one in their right mind, Carl, would trust Joe Biden if he showed up in an Uber. They'd be like, you know what, hard pass, I'll walk. But we're going to let this guy make trillion-dollar decisions, or decisions where people's lives depend on it? No one's that insane. Yeah. And yet the Democrat media apparatus, big tech, the Democrat Party in general, lied to our faces. They told us it would be great. This guy is going to be wonderful. He's incredibly gifted and talented. Meanwhile, we're watching the world burn and the economy crumble. It's just not right, and there needs to be accountability and consequences to the Democrat Party for pushing this nonsense. Because if they'll lie to us about that, they'll lie to us about anything.
And that's my point, Don, is like, you know, I've seen this, and I've actually, over the last few days, I've actually had a couple libs, like moderate libs, not the far left purple-haired weirdos, but moderate libs come up to me and be like, hey, man, like, maybe you were right about some of this stuff. How vital is this, and what are people doing to seize on the fact that we can now actually have a conversation without them shouting us down and calling us racist?
Well, listen, I think what we have to do is we have to get involved. We have to stop trusting the usual sources. Honestly, even a lot of, the conservative talking heads, I mean, they are the ones peddling a lot of these lies as well. We have to get away and break away from that uni party in Washington, D.C., from the elites on both sides. We have to start working for the common man and woman of America. That's what my father promised to do in 2016. He delivered on those promises. They took it all away from him anyway. We've seen nothing but abject failure, disaster, death, and destruction in the 3.5 years since then. We have a chance to get our country back on track. But make no mistake, Carl, there is no shame to these people. Again, whether that's the Democrat Party or if it's the Rhino faction of the Republican Party, like Paul Ryan, on the board of Fox News, they'll tell you whatever they need to tell you to have their puppet of choice put into the White House, put into any kind of position of power. We need to fight against that. We need to put people in power who are actually beholden to the people, not to the party, not to the nonsense of D.C., not to the big war machine, not to corporate interests, but to the hardworking men and women of America. My father did that once. He can and he will do it again. And that's precisely why they're going after him as hard as they have been. Whether it's the Democrat media apparatus, the Democrats themselves, big tech over the last 5 years, or honestly, even big, supposed right-wing stuff that's been attacking him for 2.5 years until they realize, well, he's going to be an inevitability, so we'll hold our nose and we'll go with it as long as we can try to harness or prevent him from doing anything that would actually be beneficial to the people who voted for him.
So, Don, obviously Biden has this big meeting with the family this weekend, decides whether or not he's going to stay in the race. Hunter Biden, apparently, according to reports, he's the biggest advocate for Joe Biden to stay in the race, stay in the White House for obvious reasons. But who do you think they're going to replace him? Who do you think they would get to replace him? And they got this big problem called Kamala Harris.
Yeah, well, Hunter Biden, clearly, because he's got his own legal problems, he needs to make sure that pardon's on the table. I'm sure they'd negotiate some sort of deal where that would be a guarantee anyway. Again, there's nothing the Democrats won't do. But honestly, I think at this point, it's Jill Biden. I think she's literally evil at this point. She's hanging on for power. She loves the attention. She loves being, heralded around the world as the first lady and flying around in Air Force One and having motorcades. And she's not going to walk away from that lifestyle. She's on the cover of Vogue yet again this week after Joe Biden's miraculous performance. And you saw after the debate last week, Carl, she talked to him. Joe, you answered all of the questions, Joe. Great work, Joe. It's like, I talked to my 4-year-old when they were that young. I don't, now that my 4-year-old is 10, I don't talk to her like that anymore, but we're talking like a petulant toddler. But you're right. the mental gymnastics that the Democrat Party is going to have to come up with to bypass the first female woman of color, blah, 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 Asian American, Islander, whatever, whatever boxes she checks, because they realize that Kamala Harris, astonishingly, is actually still in a worse position than Joe Biden right now in terms of winning, is pretty amazing. So, they'll figure out a way. Again, there's nothing decent about them, but watching them go through that exercise of how do we bypass this woman who's sitting there as the vice president, who they understand is an abject disaster for everything, is going to be fun to watch. But, again, there's nothing they won't do to try to maintain power. So I'm sure they'll come up with a way and they'll sell it to us, or at least have the media try to sell it to us as though it was a very egalitarian process decided by 30 elites in a room in Washington, D.C., bypassing the rest of the American Democrat populace.
I've said it time and time again, like, her approval rating is lower now than it was after Dick Cheney shot someone. So we're going to leave it right there.
That's, just for perspective, here you go.
And he shot someone.
Carl, I literally, when I hear some of her speeches, I'm like, we have to have like a MAGA spy in their camp. Like, their speechwriter has to be like closet MAGA, because there's no way you would put that stuff in writing, unless you were working against her, unless she's just that bad at delivering the message. It's truly special. But I want to thank whoever Kamala Harris is. Speechwriter, if that's not her on her own, you're serving your country well by showing us just how bad she actually is.
Exactly. And the community banks are in the community, Don. Appreciate you coming on very much. Yes.